What's up, guys? I'm going to start you off at the very beginning of your prepper journey. What's up, guys? There's so many sources for starting prepping for the first time, so I just thought I'd put something together that's probably, in my opinion, a more realistic starting point than, say, the government guidelines that we've had. Now, before I jump into this, there's a great website called startprepping.co.uk that's run by my friend Dan. That's got an absolute mountain of information on there. So please, I'll put the link in the description. Go and check that out afterwards. But how we're going to start this one is a week. 7 days. Prepping for 7 days. Because if you can get 7 days worth of preps and cover the main areas, then it's easy enough to do that. And once you've built that, you could do another 7 days and you've doubled it, and so on and so forth. Rather than saying go and get 90 days worth of food right now, let's not break the bank. Let's start small. Now, before we go into the 7 days worth of preps, there's other considerations to have if you are a prepper. The first being is why? What are you preparing for? Is it a specific scenario? Is it a certain thing that could happen in your life personally? Is it losing a job? Is it financial trouble? Is it civil unrest? All of these things affect the way your journey will go. And as a prepper, and many of the experienced preppers in the community will agree with me, this will change. This will tangent according to the times. One thing that seems like a threat yesterday might seem like nothing compared to what's coming tomorrow. So don't expect to stick to this like gospel. But generally, if you've got an idea of what you're preparing for, you can start to plan better and pull out scenarios. Now, the free side of prepping is rarely spoke about because people don't make any money off it. They can't give you an affiliate link for it. They can't sell you something from their shop from it. It's planning. The thing you pay for is a pad and a pen. That's it. You can get them from the pound shop. But just planning. If this was to happen, what would my plan be? And actually physically writing that down, reading through it, playing it out in your mind and thinking, where are the gaps? Where are the holes? Not only that, but if you are more than a single person in a household, having that plan written down in detail gives other people in your household a leg up. If you already know it off the back of your head and something happens, you can give it to somebody else to read through to say, this is what we're going to be doing. Or if something happens to you, you happen to be away from the home at the time, they should know where that is and they can reference that. Planning is free. Writing things down is free. Do the planning always before you have to go and buy every single thing on Amazon and on Temu and on eBay and from the surplus store. Before all of that, plan, and it's free to do. Right, with that aside, you've decided what your plan is. You've decided you're bugging in. You decided it's for this scenario, X, Y, and Z. So where do we start? A couple of cans of beans? 3 days worth of food? No, start with 7. If budgets dictate, then just simply double this up, triple this up, quadruple it up. Whatever you can afford to start off with is what you're going to start with. But 7 days is just a rough guide so I can show you the kind of storage and the kind of capacity that you're talking about when you're talking about 7 days worth of supplies. Number 1 on this list is always going to be hydration and water. The scenario could be that the water is cut off, and it's as simple as that, and it's going to be a few days before it comes back on. But a week's worth of water can hold up quite a lot of space, depending on who you listen to. Some people will tell you need 5 litres of water per person per day. For 7 days for one person, this is what that would look like. Now, that's quite a storage capacity if you're talking about bottled water. If you're putting it in a drum, it's still going to be quite a lot of water. Now, the NHS in the UK says that you need between 1.5 and 2.5 litres of water a day. That's what they recommend. So if you take the bare minimum of that, 1.5 litres, and use that as your baseline, that's what they recommend in peace times that people should be drinking. So even if you had to ration, if you had to, be a bit more thrifty with it, then 1.5 liters is a good all-round benchmark to use. Because if you only manage to drink a liter of it, you might be using the other half liter for cooking or anything else. So 1.5 liters of water over 7 days will look more like this. And that's per person. So just remember, for the amount of people in your household, make sure you're doing the multiplication and you're adding this up, and that's what you end up with. Everything I'm showing you here is for one person. Just keep that in mind. So you always got to prep for your entire household, what they drink, what they eat, what they like, what they dislike. Next, of course, after water, is the other thing we can't live without for very long. It's food. Now, in previous videos, I'll tell you, just pick up what you can. Pick up a few extra tins when you go shopping. And that's a great way to start on a slow burn. But if you're literally going out to shop to prep, then make sure you are looking at exactly what you'll eat over a week, including breakfast, dinner, and tea. 3 meals is all you need to survive. So anything extra is a bonus. But if you look at just breakfast, dinner, and tea and multiply that by the 7 times, and you'll probably end up with something like this. It might be something very basic, like you having oats every morning for your breakfast. So it's just one big bag of oats covers that. And then various different types of food, depending on your own diet, depending on your own needs. What I would recommend is you try and get some of the staples in there of different vegetables, different meats, things like that, and look at dried and canned goods, because obviously have a more shelf-stable life. Now, don't be suckered in straight away to these 25-year shelf life products, because it is a larger investment. And if you can afford to stockpile that, great. But if you buy one, the first one you buy, try them all. There's some that are really nice, but there are some you wouldn't want to be eating. And when you're in the SHTF situation, the last thing you want to be doing is forcing food down your neck that you really don't want. Dried pastas and rices are a staple and can be stocked in bulk for very cheap. So no matter what you plan over a week's worth of food, if you've got a stockpile of rice and pasta, you can bulk out most meals. Remember to keep in mind what you eat, what you enjoy eating, what your family eats and other people around you. But this food here is one person for 7 days. Next up, medication. Now, I'm not talking about first aid kits. A first aid kit is a separate thing completely. It's not part of a weekly prep shop. It is something that you just need to have. We've done different videos on first aid. There's different reviews. I'll try and link one here if I remember. If not, just have a search for the videos. There's plenty. But medication, we're talking about anything you're reliant on a weekly basis. If you take a certain medication, you have to. It's a prescribed medication. Sometimes it's not easy to stockpile, but sometimes, you can get your prescription a bit earlier. You can say you've lost a couple. Whatever you decide to do, if you can stockpile a bit of that, then that would be ideal. At least enough for that 7 days. And that's part of this weekly prep. Other things to consider are alternative medicines. I know it's not your first choice when it comes to like getting seen and treated to use an alternative medicine, but if there is an option out there that will do similar effects to the prescribed medication you have, but it's easier to get hold of in a tight situation, it might make all the difference. There's loads of books and educational materials on this, so I suggest you study whatever condition you've got and see what natural things or what easily acquired things can help your situation. Failing that, of course, don't forget over-the-counter medications are always going to be a necessity. If it's just you on your own, a couple of packs of painkillers when you go shopping is slowly going to build up a nice stockpile, especially considering we're restricted in this country of how much we can buy at any one time. So consider diarrhea medication, painkillers, over-the-counter allergy tablets, things like that, and create a little stockpile of that. 1 pack in this 7-day haul would be enough of each product, and it would slowly build up a larger stash in the long run. Heating and power. Now, bear in mind, a lot of these prepper scenarios think of grid down, whether it's man-made whether it's a natural disaster, you could end up with power cuts. We've had power cuts in the past, and I'm sure, depending on where you live, you might have had this yourself for a couple of hours or even a day before. Now, it's no use having all this food without a way to cook it. So think about how you're going to do that. I mean, if you've got something like a wood burning stove in your house, awesome, brilliant, problem solved. Make sure you stock up the fuel. For me personally, I would be using a camp stove like this one. And for a week, I will be adding per week 4 cans of this gas. It comes in the sets of 4 anyway. So just to add one of them to the weekly shopping list is not a problem. And I know that 4 cans cooking every day will last more than a week. So this is more than I actually need, but make sure, depending on what cooker you're using and what kind of gas source you're using, make sure you get a good idea yourself by testing it fully, how long that would last on regular usage. And bear in mind, it's also good to have a backup. Don't just rely on one source to cook your food. If something happens to this, what's your backup plan? I've got a little ethanol cooker and things like that I can always rely on. Some people might think barbecues. With barbecues, just bear in mind, if you're cooking outside, that could attract other people. In a very basic situation, like the power's been off for a couple of days, that won't be an issue. But if it's a longer term situation, trust me, you don't want to be cooking outside and people are following them smells. If you're considering any sort of electric way of cooking, like a little electric hob top, just bear in mind and look at how much power that uses. And if you've got power banks, solar chargers, things like that, how much cooking time you can actually get out of that. You don't want it to cut off halfway through a meal and have to wait several hours or even till the next day to try and cook again. And if there's no sun, which often in this country there's not, then it's going to be even more of a struggle. Next up, we have lighting. So what's a week's worth of lighting? Well, if there's no power, obviously we're going to be looking at torches, head torches, things like that. Now, these aren't a finite resource when it comes to torches, but what powers them is. If it's a rechargeable one, no problem. Make sure you've got the power banks charged up and hope you can charge it up. Personally, I would recommend something that takes a battery, because batteries is something you can add to this 7-day shopping list per torch. 1 battery per torch or per device, however many it takes. If it takes 1 or if it takes 3, a battery for each one would be enough as part of a weekly shop. So if all of your light up devices take 7 batteries altogether, you want to be getting 2 packs of batteries to cover that for the week. Now, if you're thinking candles, which a lot of people do because it also gives you a little bit of heat, then make sure you're looking at the burn time. Lots of places, things like IKEA, will actually say on the side of the candle how long the expected burn time is. This is an average. Sometimes a bit less, sometimes more. Don't set your watch by it. But for example, if you're going to have candles in 3 different locations, and they are 3-hour burn candles, and you expect to need them for around 6 hours in an evening, then that's going to be 6 candles for the 3 locations per day, which works out at a massive 42 candles for the week. So make sure you're considering that burn time and considering your lighting source when it comes to things like that. Same with the storm lanterns. I've got a paraffin lantern. Look how much it burns. Try and do some tests to see how long it lasts and stock the paraffin accordingly. Bear in mind with things like that, with flames or with paraffin, you're going to have fumes, you're going to have heat, you're going to have a dangerous source of fire. So if you've got kids around, just make sure you're practicing a bit of safety with that one. That's it, covered, right? No. Entertainment. Yes, entertainment. It is a thing. Nobody wants to be bored for a week, whether you're on your own, whether you're with a group of people. So think about what you're going to do in a week. Cooking is going to take up a lot of it. Now, we're not talking a major Teotihuacan situation here where you're going to be running out hunting and surviving, and that's going to take up the majority of your time. This could just be a week's long power cut. So you're just surviving at home, but without technology and without that power. So think about starting to stockpile a couple of books. This doesn't have to be an expensive thing. You can pick them up in charity shops. And even if you've not heard of it, great. Pick up 2 or 3 from a charity shop as part of your weekly shop. Try and pick up books that you don't know what they are, because that's the whole idea, right? You're going to pick up something and read it for the first time. That's more entertaining than reading a book you already know. I've also mentioned in the past things like the portable DVD players. There's some great little ones on Amazon now that I've picked up. DVDs you can pick up dirt cheap from car boot sales and charity shops. Yet again, these portable DVD players now have an inbuilt battery, so they can be pre-charged for a length of time. So if you ration that like one film a night, it might last the whole week. But also, if you've got power banks and backup sources, then you've got a way to charge that too. Just think about how you're going to entertain yourself for a full week, because Monopoly just doesn't cut it after 2 days. Hygiene and sanitation has to be a factor in all of your preps. Do not stock a cupboard full of food, full of stuff that goes into your body without considering what comes out of your body. And yes, in that situation, the toilets might still work, and hopefully the water in the toilets are working and it's just like a general power cut and you'll be okay. However, you have to have that backup in place in case they don't. Considerations for this include a way to block your toilet, because especially if you're in a more populated area, if the sewage system starts to back up, you don't want that coming back up. So there's different ways to do that. There is inflatable balls you can buy to shove down there. You could literally fill a carrier bag full of soil, tie it, drop it in. It'll do something. It will help the situation. But you've also got to consider, where is your waste going to be going? Make sure you've got some sort of portable toilet or buckets on hand with a way to dispose of it. Number ones can be tipped out somewhere, no problems, down a grid. Don't worry about that. You can go on somebody's grass down the road. But number twos, try and have bags so you can tie that up and dispose of that away from any sort of food or water source and out of the house as soon as possible for health and hygiene purposes. Part of this, of course, is cleanliness. So consider baby wipes, toilet wipes, hand sanitizers. You can even get really large baby wipes that are like bath wipes, so you can have like a little wipe down stuff like you would on a hike. Consider ways to keep clean without using too much water, because your water, again, is a finite resource, or it could be at the time. Now, that is all you generally need for 7 days. If you're just starting out, that is a great starting point to have all of them items together. I have added 2 extras. Now, the 2 extras I would add if you are serious about prepping, and this is just the starting point to build up, is 1 book or knowledge source every week and 1 luxury item every week. By book or knowledge source, I would say something like a medicinal guide. Everyone should have the Collins Food for Free book or the SAS Survival Guide, something that you could learn, read, teach yourself, increase your knowledge, and help you in that situation. You'll find after a few months of doing this, then you're going to start to have a nice little library of knowledge that could be vital come SHTF. Your luxury item could be a power bank. It could be anything like that. All the prepper stuff that they try and sell you on the different channels. And I've put links on my videos as well, so there's some there. It's kind of one of those things. If you can afford it after everything like this, then just buy one thing. You don't have to go out and buy everything a prepper says he needs in the first week. But if you can get one thing each time you do a shop, it's going to help towards it. Also, if you have a vice that you think cannot just disappear in an SHTF situation, for example, you're a smoker or a vapor, as it were, then think about how much liquid or how much tobacco you use within a week, and your luxury item should be that. So if you go through 4 bottles of liquid, for example, of the small bottles of vaping liquid, then buy 4 as part of this weekly shop. Put that away. Don't use it. Same with tobacco. If nicotine's something that you're not going to be able to kick in a terrible situation, my advice would be try to, because nobody wants to be reliant on that. But if it's something you want to consider after the fact, then think how much you smoke. Even if you don't usually smoke tobacco, you usually smoke cigarettes, but you think you can buy a 50-gram pouch of tobacco and put that away as an emergency supply, do that. That would be your luxury item. And that's it. You're well on your way to becoming a prepper. But it's not that easy. 7 days will just not cut it for some of the situations we're talking about. So depending on what you're preparing for, just think how you can scale this. If you could manage a shop like this over the space of a month to get a week's worth of supplies, excellent. Then over 2 or 3 or 4 months, it will start to increase and build up. Make sure you're always considering your storage space, always looking at your dates. Take sell by dates and use by dates with a pinch of salt. There's loads of research on different channels that you can see of how long things actually last. So don't just throw it out instantly if it's out of date, but consider your dates. Many other considerations along this journey which you'll come across when we talk about home defense, self-defense, bugging in, bugging out, all sorts. There is loads of different content for these things, but this is just generally meant as a get you started guide that is probably a bit more in depth than the government advice. The one thing I didn't mention, which the government advice does, is some sort of radio, so you can turn it on and find out what's going on. What chances are whatever's being broadcast over the radio is not going to tell you much anyway. But if it's a situation where there's no information, there's no internet, and there's no phones, the radio is not going to really be much use to you unless we're talking about communications. But that's a video for a whole different day. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope if you're brand new to this, that this gives you some sort of guide to get started. Don't forget the very first thing, which is planning. That's what it's all about. Without a plan, all of this is just chaos and hoarding. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. There's loads more content. There's a massively helpful community that always comment on my videos who will be happy to answer your questions even if I don't. So get involved with the community, leave a comment, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.